are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
Getting off to a fast start this season is important for Hugh Freeze and Auburn, but not all hope is lost if the Tigers stumble out the gates early. This latest edition of the Uptempo Podcast starts right now. Yes, sir. What's up, Auburn family? What's up, Uptempo gang? I'm your host, Dustin Smith. I hope everybody's having a blessed week out there, staying cool, staying out of that summer heat. Wanted to get in here today and discuss a couple of scenarios with you guys. Everyone thinks it's pretty important for Auburn to get off to a hot start, and I agree with that. But is there a path to Auburn still getting things corrected and having a good season if they stumble out the gates early? I believe that there is. Before we get into those discussions today, please do me a big favor. Smash that thumbs up button, sub to the channel if you have not already, and share this out on social media. It helps us out a ton, man. So one of the big topics this offseason for Auburn has been that Baylor game week 1. Friday night in Waco. It's probably going to be a wild one. And when you have all summer, when you have all offseason to look ahead, usually Auburn fans, we're kind of used to that cupcake game right out the gate early. You remember last year, 77-3 or whatever it was versus Alabama A&M. Back in the day, I remember Auburn starting off with Clemson. You had the year that Auburn started off with Washington in the Chick-fil-A game. You had Oregon one time down there in Dallas. So there's been some big season openers, but more times than not, Auburn usually gets the cupcake game first and then kind of builds into it. This year, you're on the road at Baylor. It's not even a neutral site. It's at Baylor on a Friday night on Fox national TV. It's a big one that everyone's got circled. So with the way Auburn's season ended last year, with the way that the first 2 seasons under Hugh Freeze have ended, back-to-back losing seasons to start off his tenure, everyone's looking at that Baylor game, hyper-focused, saying Auburn needs to come out here and get a dub right out the gate. And I don't disagree with that. And I'm going to get into what happens if Auburn wins that game and the positive things that'll come from it. But also going to lay out in the second half of this episode why not all hope is lost if in those first 6 games, which are much more difficult than Auburn's last 6 games, if Auburn stumbles early, why I still see a path to where Hugh Freeze can get the ship righted and continue into year 4 as Auburn's head coach. But just kind of laying out the groundwork, laying out where we are in terms of momentum, in terms of perception right now of the Auburn program. You've had 4 straight losing seasons, no big wins, and something that I didn't think we would see under Hugh Freeze. Auburn is outside of the top 25 in recruiting, and that's according to every major recruiting service. The Tigers are struggling right now. You see all these teams in the SEC pulling in commitments, and Auburn's missing on all of their big targets, unfortunately. That's because of the perception. That's because your program no longer has any momentum. And when your head coach is acknowledging coming into the season, I got to get it done this year or I won't be back, obviously recruits see that. So I say all that to say the program that's the perception. That's where the program is. And there's nothing the program can do at this point to gain the momentum except win games on the field. There's a little honeymoon phase when a new coach comes in. That time has passed. It's now about results. And any SEC coach that starts off his tenure with 2 losing seasons is coming into year 3 with a lot of eyes on him. Not just fans, not just media, but the recruits. Where is the program at as a whole right now? There's just no momentum. And the only way to get this train rolling at this point is either commitments or winning games. And you're not getting any commitments anymore because you haven't won the games. So really the only way to get the train rolling is to win some games. And you can't do that until opening week, Friday night versus Baylor. So that's what a win would do. To me, like, when you've gone all off season, there's been all these discussions, all these, hot seat lists, and Hugh Freeze has made every one of them. But Auburn's also being mentioned as dark horse, and wouldn't be surprised if Auburn slips up. The last episode I did, I said high ceiling, low floor. I mean, Auburn this season could go a lot of different ways for Auburn. For the Tigers to come out and win week 1, because then you look at the next 2 games. You have South Alabama and Ball State in those next on that second and third game right there. So if you beat Baylor, you should start 3-0. If Auburn beats Baylor, you should handle South. You should handle Ball State. You should start 3-0. You would be 3-0 with a big-time win week 1 versus Baylor on national TV. You would have some momentum. There would be reason for optimism coming into that 4th game. There would be reason for hope. I guarantee you, if Auburn beats Baylor week 1 and then handles their business week 2 and 3 versus inferior opponents, and those 2 games being at home, that Auburn will start to rack up some commitments. If Auburn starts off 3-0 with a big win versus Baylor and then gets 2 home games after that to court recruits to get them in on visits, and Auburn handles their business in those environments and wins those games, Auburn will get some momentum on the recruiting trail. You will see, I would guess, a handful of commitments, not just 1 or 2, because I think you got a lot of guys out there that want to come to Auburn and are willing to come to Auburn. But right now, Auburn's just going to finish 2nd. Auburn's just going to finish 3rd. You're going to be up there, but you're not going to get the commitment from them right now. But if you start winning some games and you start building some momentum up and the positivity inside of Auburn and with the national media outside of Auburn starts to build up, I think you would start to see some high school kids in this upcoming class start to jump in the boat. Another thing it does is it just builds belief. I speak a lot about Auburn's losing culture, that Auburn has built a culture of losing, that even before this 4 seasons in a row of having a losing record, Auburn had a losing culture before that, because you have to go all the way back to 2013 to find a season where Auburn didn't lose at least 4 games. As we sit a couple of months out from the start of the 2025 season, it has been since 2013, y'all, since Auburn has had a season where they lost less than 4 games. That's not the standard. That's not good enough. That's not what Auburn football is. That's over a decade of what was mediocrity and now has become less than mediocre. Because Auburn because Auburn hasn't even been mediocre these past 4 years. They've been bad. A losing record is not mediocre. That's bad. You suck ass. But before that, it was mid, 8-5. You know, those famous comments Gus made on his way out. Yeah, 6-4 in a COVID year. Pretty solid. No, it's not, brother. It's not solid. It's not solid at Auburn. And so when that's kind of the psyche, that's where Auburn's been. It's been going on for so long. Auburn hasn't won big games. There's a few in there, right? 2017 and 2019. But even that was forever ago. They're just, in a long time, there has not been big wins at Auburn. There hasn't been, and Auburn certainly hasn't put them together, right? Hasn't strung together a bunch of big wins, created a lot of momentum for the program. You kind of did it in 2017, and then you come out and fall flat on your face, get smashed in the SEC title game, and then you get destroyed by UCF in the New Year's Six Bowl. So you end up losing 4 games anyway, and all the momentum you had built up for the program just kind of crashes and burns, and you're right back in the same damn place. And then you come right back out the next year, and you have another mid-year. Auburn just can't keep it going up. Auburn has not been able to string together wins and put together some momentum for a long time. So it feels like here we go again all the time. Anytime Auburn's in a tight game and things don't necessarily go Auburn's way, it feels like, oh, man, here we are again. Auburn's going to find a way to lose those games. That A&M game kind of helped, but, I mean, you still came out the next week and lost the Iron Bowl that you could have won. Bama turned the ball over 4 times, and you made some ridiculous play calls with having Jarquez throw a ball and a halfback pass from one side of the field to the other and all that kind of stuff. So that momentum didn't last very long, right? A&M game was fun. It helped you nail down some recruitments, but You weren't able to continue building momentum off of that. If Auburn starts out early with a win at Baylor and then handles their business versus 2 G5 teams before they get into SEC play with Oklahoma and Arkansas and all those teams, or excuse me, A&M. It's Oklahoma then A&M. Before you get into that stretch, you would have some momentum build up. You would be feeling good about yourself. The vibes would be high. Versus if Auburn loses to Baylor right out the gate, and then you're 2-1 coming into Oklahoma, it kind of feels like a must-win week 4, doesn't it? All of a sudden, we got to win the game because we can't be 2-2. So, very important, in my opinion, from a momentum, from a perception standpoint, for Auburn to come out here week 1, man, and get this dub versus Baylor. And then obviously you got to, the next 2 weeks before you open up SEC play, handle your business. But you think Auburn could do that. So you're looking at, if you beat Baylor, you're looking at a 3-0 start. You're looking at everybody feeling good as you make that trip to Norman, Oklahoma. And then even if, let's say you lose a tight game in Norman, Oklahoma, all hope's not lost. You're 3-1. You come back next week, you got another big opponent in A&M. And you can still right the ship. You can get a dub there, and you're right back to 4-1. And everything's okay again. But if you lose that Baylor game, man, you're coming into Oklahoma feeling like, oh, buddy, we've got to get this dub. Because then if you lose that one and you're 2-2, well, then you're going to College Station with the noise will be so loud around Hugh Freeze if Auburn's 2-2 going into that A&M game. All of the national media, all of the local media, eyes will be on Hugh. The noise will be loud. People will be talking. Can he save his job? It'll look, we've talked so much about all these different ways that Auburn's season and situation looks like Florida's last year. There's another one. Billy Napier came out the gate, got clapped by Miami, got clapped by A&M, and Florida's board of directors had a meeting to come up with the buyout. So they were in a very similar situation. They needed to win that week 1 game versus Miami, the same way that Hugh Freeze needs to win this week 1 game versus Baylor. And they didn't do it. And unfortunately for Florida, it was at home, and it was, it looked really bad. But it's the same thing. And then they stumbled out the gates, and Florida was this close to firing Billy. They were that close. Now, that gets me to the flip side. That brings me to the flip side. To where even if Auburn stumbles early, when you look at that second half of the season, Hugh could do something like what Billy did last year and throw together some wins, and all of a sudden all is right in the world, because winning fixes everything. So it's very important for Auburn. It's very important for Hugh Freeze, because to get a fast start and to get out early with some wins, because what Billy Napier did last year doesn't happen a lot. Okay? Most times when the board of trustees meet mid-season, you're cooked, bro. It's hard to get up off the mat. That was Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder get off the mat stuff right there from Billy last year. He was dead. The ref was at 8, 9, and Billy rose up. That's if Hugh loses to Baylor, doesn't handle business versus Oklahoma, and comes out 2-2, that's going to be Hugh. You're going to be on the mat, Hugh. It's hard to get off that mat when you're dazed and confused. You'd much more rather just go back to your corner, 3-1, something like that after an Oklahoma loss, or you maybe if you lose to Baylor and then you come back and you right this ship versus Oklahoma and you get to the 3-1 that way. But you can't start out 2-2. And I know that people are listening to me and going, why can't you be 4-0? Why can't you be 5-0? Why couldn't you be 6-0 and beat Georgia? That's what I want. That's what I want. I'd love that more than anything, right? Like, I'm just trying to paint out all the different scenarios and have a little bit of a realistic discussion here. If Hugh comes out and wins all those games and Auburn starts off, these first 6 games, 5-1, 6-0, well then, yeah, buddy, like everything's good to go. And then you just got to handle your business in the back half and games that Auburn is going to be favored in anyway. So it's a really interesting situation. There's so many different ways that this year could go for Auburn that I'm not just saying this because I'm an Auburn fan. Auburn really is one of the most fascinating teams in the country this year. I'm very interested in Florida. I'm very interested in South Carolina. I'm very interested in LSU. Looking outside of the SEC, a team like USC, Michigan. There's these teams out there where I'm looking, and I want to see what where your program is at. But Auburn is one of those teams as well, and because there's so many different scenarios, how they all play out, the way it all goes down, there's not a lot of black and white to me here. The end result will be extremely black and white. We'll look at the 12 games at the end of the regular season, and we'll have a good idea of where this program is going under Hugh Freeze. And all that's going to matter is win total. It's got to be above 7. If he's 8-4, he's good to go. Anything less than that, it might be the end, in my opinion. And 8-4 is, it gets you another year. It doesn't necessarily propel you forward long term or anything like that. But obviously, Hugh wouldn't get fired after going 8-4, and that would be a big jump, a 3-game increase from your last season's regular win season total. So it would be a big jump. So I think for Hugh, the goal, obviously, in those first 6 games should be 6-0. That's, come on, goes without saying. But I think you need to at least try to be 4-2. It can't be any less than 4-2. You have to beat one of those big 3 opponents in the first 6 games. You got to beat Baylor, A&M, or Georgia or Oklahoma, right? You got to get out to 4-2 there. So I guess you really got to be 2-2 in those games. You got to split those, in my opinion. You got to split those. I think if you come out and you're 3-3, it's not going to be good enough, man. It's not going to be good enough, because then even if Auburn starts out 3-3, you've really got your back against the wall and you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole when there's going to be so much noise around you. And that's just so difficult to do. So I have the schedule pulled up here, and I want to look at the second half and just paint out this scenario. Let's just walk through this scenario where if Auburn starts out 4-2, okay, let's say Auburn beats Baylor and loses to Oklahoma on the road and loses a close game to Georgia at home. Well, then with Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt, you should go 4-0 in those games, at least 3-1. Let's be conservative here, right? Let's be conservative and say Auburn goes 3-1, because Auburn did lose to 3 of those 4 teams last year. Let's say Auburn goes 3-1 in that next game. So they start out 4-2 and then go 3-1. Okay. So that puts you at 7-3. You should beat Mercer. That puts you at 8-3 with Alabama coming into town. I mean, you win that game, you're looking at maybe a playoff situation at 9-3, especially if Bama's had a good season. I don't think the main thing for Auburn fans will be just beating Alabama again. 2019 feels like forever ago. Finally beating them at home again. These last couple home games versus Alabama have been some of the biggest heartbreakers of my Auburn fandom. But what I wanted to say here is, let's say Auburn loses to Baylor, wins versus Ball State, beats South Alabama, then loses to Oklahoma. You still have a shot. There's going to be a lot of noise, but you still have a shot. You got a 5-game stretch in Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and Mercer. Auburn's just got to get to that stretch with a decent record. I think it's got to be 4-2. If Auburn gets there 3-3, and then it kind of depends on what that looks like. Like, is Jackson struggling, and do you have to go to Deuce? Have you just blown some games? That's really the interesting discussion to me as well. If, like, say you lose to Baylor. So let's just say you lose a close game to Baylor and Baylor pulls it out. There will be a lot of noise that week. And then if Auburn beats Ball State and beats South Alabama, people won't really pay too much attention to those. Auburn will be 2-1 going into that Oklahoma game, and the Baylor game will still be the one that everyone's thinking about. Like, you lost your one game versus a good team that you played, right? But if Auburn loses to Baylor and then comes in and beats Oklahoma and looks good doing that, you'll be 3-1. People can kind of chalk up the Baylor thing to being week one, and keep it pushing. So it really just kind of depends on how it all plays out. We're all going to be super emotional after the Baylor game. And if Auburn wins or loses, but in a loss especially, we'll have Auburn fans emotional, like, oh my God, here we go again. National media will definitely start pointing fingers and all that kind of stuff. But it's still a week one game. Like, as bad as it would suck, and in that first segment, I talked about the momentum. Like, you're going to miss the opportunity to build that momentum. You still got, there's still 11 games, right? So there'll be all kind of noise if Auburn comes out and beats Oklahoma, beats A&M, and is going into Georgia 5-1 or 4-1, excuse me. Then the Baylor game will kind of be an afterthought. So there's just a lot of different scenarios here. And it's just going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how it all plays out. If Auburn loses to Baylor, how does it happen? If Auburn loses just a tight game, a wacky game on a Friday night to open the season on the road, and they win a couple big games later, like I just mentioned, whatever. Can't blow it. That's the one thing. The opposite of all the momentum I talked about in the first segment is Hugh Freeze crapping the bed versus Baylor. If it's a game that Auburn should win and Auburn finds a way to lose, oh my goodness. That will be hard. If you look, that's going to be hard for Hugh Freeze to get back up and overcome, because he's already got a handful of those games at Auburn. And he's admitted it this offseason, where if he would have coached better, last year's record would have looked different. We've spoke about that ad nauseum. We know the games. Arkansas, Cal, blah, 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 blah. If that continues, if he comes out week one on national TV and does that versus Baylor, it's the opposite of that momentum discussion I talked about. It's the complete opposite. It's nothing but negativity at that point. If we get through these first 6 games here and Auburn has a couple of losses and it's just, hey, that's a tough stretch. Your first 6 games you had to play at Baylor, at Oklahoma, at A&M, and Georgia came to town. And you just have 2 losses on your record because that's a tough stretch, that's fine. But if you blow those games, like you had them in the bag, and in-game coaching or lack of organization, things that the head coach can control, if those things continue to be the reason Auburn loses games, boy, then the noise around the head coach will be at an all-time high. And I think the best thing for Hugh Freeze is you want to get to that 5-game stretch there on that second column of the schedule. You want to get to that stretch with a winning record. You want to have some cushion. You don't want to get to that stretch having to win every single one of those games and having no margin for error, because then it's going to be trouble. Because then you're fighting an uphill battle. You're going upstream, and it's just tough to do in this league. Hugh Freeze has dug himself a hole in his first 2 years at Auburn. He's dug a pretty big hole. But the best way to start getting out of that hole is start winning games immediately. Come out on Fox Friday night, beat Baylor, and show the world that Auburn football is back. Then you come home, you don't have any of these New Mexico State scenarios like you had year one with the Ball State, with the South Alabama, and get some momentum built up in the first 3 weeks of the season. That way, everybody's feeling good. The vibes are high as Auburn travels to Norman, Oklahoma, man. I appreciate everybody for watching this episode. Get my camera view changed up here. Like I said earlier, man, please hit that thumbs up button. Sub to the channel if you have not done that already. I will have a pod coming out for the members later on in the week. So be on the lookout for that, guys. It's a dead time right now in terms of content, right? We're just kind of trying to get to SEC Media Days. Right now, there's just not a whole lot to talk about. I want to thank you all that have stayed tapped in with us this offseason, man. You guys are the absolute best. You guys are the diehards. And you will be the ones that I will remember first when Auburn finally gets this thing turned around, man, and starts winning some football games. So for our members, for our loyal viewers, I love you guys. I appreciate y'all. I will see y'all on the next episode. And if you're listening on audio, Spotify, Apple, anything like that, go ahead and leave a 5-star review. Follow us over there as well. I would appreciate that greatly. I'll see you guys on the next one. It's Ward Amigo, baby. Peace.